All right, happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to Automation Hour. If you are joining us for the first time, all lines are muted. Please use the chat function to ask any questions, and if we are not able to get to your questions in today's session, we'll continue the discussion on our Trailblazer Community Salesforce Automation Hour. And after the session sometime, we will post the recording to our YouTube channel along with the link to the deck and post that also out on Automation Hour, as well as a link to it on the Salesforce Automation Hour Trailblazer community, as well as Twitter. And here are our upcoming sessions. So if you haven't registered for them, I encourage you to register. And if you're not able to make it, at least you'll get the notification after the fact when the link to the YouTube channel. But I do want to highlight a special session that we have scheduled for July 20th, where we have the Salesforce Automation Product Managers, Jason Teller and Arnaud Bose, who will be presenting on the Summer 18 release highlights. And we cannot bring this free online webinar series without our sponsor, so shout out to Concrete.io. And here are your co-hosts, David, Rakesh, and myself. All three of us are on the call today. And we're really excited to have Shannon Tran on today to present to us Process Builder and invocable methods. We hardly ever talk about invoking the code side of things. So today we're going to have a mixture of that. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Shannon.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right, and you're seeing the PowerPoint in presenter mode?
Yes.
Awesome, great. So my name is Shannon. I'm a manager at Delay Digital. I do have a blog. It's salesforcefinesse.com. If you haven't gone there, you're not missing out a whole lot because I haven't been updating it lately. I have 6 certifications, and I'm eager to start going after the domain certs. I presented at Southeast Dreamin', Dreamforce, and a few different user groups. I'm on Twitter. I'm Shan Tran Cisco on Twitter. And the most important thing about me is I love Taylor Swift. So yeah, it's nice to meet you guys, and I'm really excited that you joined me to learn about invocable methods today. So the agenda. So I love Process Builder, but like any product on the platform, it does have its limitations, and we're going to talk about those limitations because if it didn't have the limitations, we might not be talking about invocable methods. We'll talk about some of your declarative options around the limitations of Process Builder. We'll talk about using Apex in Process Builder, which is really what we're going to focus on for the most of the session. It's going to be on invocable methods, which is how we show that Apex to Process Builder. We'll talk about the considerations. So before you put any code in the system, you need to make certain considerations. Actually, before you do any customization in the system, you need to think through your options, and there are considerations. We'll walk into a demo, and then we'll come back for any resources. So about those limitations. So like we talked about very high level, every application I've ever worked on, there's like a fine line between declarative and code. And usually that fine line is crossed when you hit a limitation. So the 2 main things that I've hit several times in Process Builder is there's no ability to delete declaratively using Process Builder. And then Process Builder cannot send outbound messages. So an outbound message is kind of like when Taylor calls her friends. Actually, your Salesforce instance, in that case, could be Taylor, and sending information to external systems, which would be the friends. So those are the 2 big limitations where we can start to talk about what our options are. And so you do have options. You have declarative options. So one of the declarative options that you have is to invoke a flow that deletes records. So you can use flow to delete records. You can call to flow from a process builder and delete records. So that is one of your options. Another option that you have is to create a workflow rule that sends outbound messages. So that's the kind of option that you have that's declarative to call your friends. And then the third option is really to use a process builder with invocable methods that can do either or both. The other thing about invocable methods is it allows you to do a lot more than just deleting records or sending outbound messages. So you can pretty much do a ton of other things, which we will get into. Um, but what I do want to highlight is if you have any concerns or questions about which option you should use, there's a really great article on Salesforce Help that helps you pick which automation is probably best for your use case. So let's get started with invocable methods. So when we talk about declarative development, we're talking about clicks, not code, right? And so with invocable methods in Process Builder, what you're able to do is kind of marry your clicks and your code without using something like custom settings. So if you're not familiar with custom settings, what they are is this way that you can build out a declarative element to a piece of code. The caveat here is whoever is writing the code has to make sure that they include the custom setting into that code. So the custom setting is like a panel in your system where you can actually toggle different things. You can set different records up, you can set exclusions, etc. If you don't already know about it, I highly recommend that you learn about them because it is a declarative way to manage different pieces of your platform. But that said, invocable methods with Process Builder allow you to manage turning on and off sections of code without using custom settings. Using invocable methods with Process Builder allows you to order your methods without using a trigger handler. So if you're familiar with triggers, you know that triggers fire kind of out of order, right? So you can't pick how your triggers are going to handle if you have multiple triggers on an object. So the recommendation is to have one trigger per object and then use something called a trigger handler to manage which methods need to fire when. So without getting into that kind of craziness and that kind of a framework, invocable methods allow you to order certain methods within a process builder using the different nodes or different actions in the process builder instead of using a trigger handler. Process Builder provides you with the capability to delete, which we already talked about. It'll provide you with the capability to send outbound messages when you use an invocable method, which we already talked about. It'll allow for much, much more robust things than just deleting and sending outbound messages because you really are allowing the Apex that you've written to be exposed in Process Builder. So the sky is pretty much the limit. And with that, it encourages a friendship between your devs and your admins. Because if the sky's the limit for your admins and they can turn off a piece that's not working within the process builder instead of having to step through code and go through, deploying code from the sandbox or deploying updates from the sandbox and running through all your test classes, etc. I just imagine that there's a healthy relationship between your devs and admins already, and it's only going to get better as you continue to build out things like custom settings and invocable methods and process builders to allow the admin to take ownership over which pieces of the code fire when. That said, there are considerations. So although I love invocable method process builder because it just increases your ability to manage things on the fly, you can't pass multiple parameters into invocable methods. So if you're a developer, this will make a lot of sense to you. If you're an admin, this might be a little confusing. But basically, when we're passing information into the code to do its work, there's a limitation around how we pass that information. So if you're a developer, the suggestions that I've seen are to use inner methods or invocable variable as the workarounds. And I did link the help articles in this deck. Another consideration is although the trigger framework that I talked about is a little bit crazy, it's actually best practice. So when we're talking about using invocable methods plus process builder, that's not how most enterprise organizations handle which methods are firing when. And custom settings and custom metadata are typically preferred in a traditional development pattern. So it's just something to think about. And when you're evaluating your options, it is definitely something to consider if you already have a trigger handler framework on the object where you're implementing the code. Finally, I know that we talk about best practice on Process Builder a lot, but when we're implementing the process builder with invocable methods, we should really make sure that we have a process builder for insert and then also a process builder for updates. What this does is it helps you debug a lot better because you're separating out when certain processes are firing and you're excluding certain processes from needing to be fired every single time. So it's something that does make it a lot easier, especially as you have building numbers of invocable methods per process. And then finally, if you're not already familiar with order of execution, you definitely need to be like looking at order of execution anytime you're using process builder plus code. Your code typically fires first, but when we're talking about using invocable methods with process builder, that isn't the case. So depending on what you're trying to do, the order of execution will affect your outcome or your desired outcome. So yeah. So before I set up the demo scenario, were there any questions about the content that we've covered thus far?
I currently do not see any questions posted.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the demo scenario. So I was racking my brain around like what are some of the things that I've seen a lot where an invocable method would solve. And so I set up this demo scenario to kind of solve for one of the things that's come up over and over and over again in the last 5 years, which is account team management, and especially account team management when we're undergoing either a reorg or we're changing the way that we're planning the account teams or we're changing the way that people sell. So in our demo scenario, Universal Containers is undergoing a massive change to how they think about account teams. And because they're going through this change, sales reps are adding the wrong team members to accounts. Account team usage is changing completely, but the process hasn't been ironed out yet. So nobody really knows who should be on which account teams. And for those two reasons, the sales ops team is preferring to manage the account team members directly, either via the mass account team reassign wizard in the settings panel, or with list imports of the team members so that they can pull exception reports and figure out who needs to be added to which accounts. The caveat here is it's actually an extra step when you're adding account team members to different teams or changing account team ownership in Workbench to make sure that you're removing the old team members from the team when you're making an account ownership change. So if you have an account with 5 different people on it and you change the owner and you don't remember to go back in and change the account team and delete the old team members, it causes an issue. And that's just an extra step for any admin to go back in and then run another mass update to delete the existing account team members. So the ask is anytime an owner is changed via data loader or Workbench, the existing team members need to be removed. Anytime a user selects keep account team in the Salesforce Classic interface, that the existing team members are still taken off except for the owner of the account, because that's okay. That default account team members are not appreciated. So if somebody checks the checkbox to automatically add the default account team members, that does not actually happen, regardless of the user setting. It just shouldn't be a thing. And the two caveats is there's not currently a trigger on the account object, nor does Universal Containers want to add one. And then administrators also want to be able to turn off this requirement as needed. So that's a lot of requirements. It's a tall order, but I've seen this scenario almost exactly at least 20 times. And I've heard about this a number of times too. So before we pull out our hair, we can actually create an invocable method. It's less than 20 lines of code, and we can put it into the system using a process builder instead of a trigger. And then we can also give admins everything they want, including the option to turn this off when it's no longer necessary. So with that, I'll step into our demo. And are you seeing my Salesforce instance?
Yes, we see your account screen.
Cool. Awesome. So I'm logged in as Shannon Howe, and at Universal Containers, I'm an admin and a sales rep. Normally would never happen, not in a million years, but this is actually just a dev org, and I wanted to have multiple people doing multiple things in it, and I have 2 users. So that said, violating a best practice and demoing from a sysadmin user, but I'm also the person who's managing the accounts, so it's totally kosher, no worries. The first thing I want to show you is what this invocable method really looks like. So I'll go into the developer console. And we have it up because it's the last thing that I looked at. And so this is like a really, really simple method, right? And so what it's doing is right here, this is the big indication that it's an invocable method that I can expose to my process builder. And then I have, some descriptions. So this is a method that deletes the team members that aren't the account owners. So again, if the team member is on the team, but they're the owner of the account, we're not going to delete those off of the account, but we want to knock everybody else off of the account team anytime that the ownership is changed, just because it's creating a major mess for the admins to go and clean up afterwards. So with that, this is pretty high level, pretty simple code. This is our parameter, which is a list of accounts, and we'll set this parameter when we're running the process builder. So I'll show you this piece and where it gets set in a minute. But yeah, so this is just a method. It's called account members delete because we're deleting the team members, and then we're passing just our account list parameter into the method. Here's where we're creating a map. So we're going to fill this map with the account owner ID and then also the account ID. So the map, again, is a set of key value pairs, and we're going to use that map in our query of team members. So the reason we're querying the team members, again, is we want to find all of the related team members to the account that we're passing into this method so that we can knock them off of the account list or knock them off the account team. So what I'm doing is I'm going to find all the team members from the account team where the account ID is in our map and the user ID is not in our map. So the user ID is, again, the owner ID. User ID is the person who we're associating to the account team. So when the account team member is not the owner, then we're going to delete that team member. So it's 18 lines of code. If you're familiar with Apex, this is pretty straightforward stuff. It's a map and a list, and we're just going to delete the team members off. So what we'll do now is we'll go into our process builder, and I actually have it open over here. So we have this account update process builder, and what I need to do is I want to add a step to it for Invokable Apex. So what I'll do is I'll just clone it, save, and actually I already have it here. But what I'll do is show you what we have in this process builder. So when a record is created or edited, and actually I want to, cancel, then we have if the owner is changed, we have account owner is changed, true. That's the only condition. Then what we have here is Apex. So I'm going to actually delete this so you can see how it got set up. So what I'm going to do is when the owner is changed, I'm going to select Apex as my action. I'm going to say delete team members. And then I'm going to find the Apex class, which is my delete team members class that we just stepped through. And what I'll do is I'll add my variable. And here I will select the account record. So again, this is that parameter that we're passing in to our class so that it can do the work. The very high level thing that I said I would show you. So that's it. Pretty simple, right? So we had a developer write the code for us. Now we have the code in our process builder. I'm going to activate it. And then we're kind of done. So what I can do now is I'll show you how this works. So first, I'll find an account that I currently own. So abnormal holdings. Man, this is a major account, huh? So what I'll do is I'll look at the account team. So I have 3 people on the account team right now. I have Greg, Tom, and myself. So per our logic, when I change the account owner, if I have an existing team, everybody should be knocked off except for the new owner. So what I'll do is I'll change the owner to Tom. I'll click change owner. And then we see everybody got knocked off except for Tom. So that works. So what I'll do now is I'm actually going to go to Classic because there's an option in Classic that lets me select keep account team members. And if our code works, it shouldn't let me keep the account team members. So I'll go to a different account that I own, Accountant Corporation. And I see my team members here, Greg, Shannon, and Tom. And what I'll do is I'll click change. First, I'll select the keep account team to make sure I do it. And I'll also change this one to Tom as well. So when I click save, what should happen is the account team will fall off except for Tom. And that's exactly what happened here. So there was some requirement about the default team members as well. And if you recall, anybody who has a default team member, those default team members shouldn't come into the account team when the account team or when the account ownership is changed. And that's actually a native behavior that we need to make sure is not coming forward either. So what I'll do is I'll go to Tom's record in setup to make sure that he has an account team first. And if he doesn't, I'll set one up and we'll test to make sure that that condition is also met. So we're on Tom's record in setup and he has default account teams over here. I'm going to add Greg to his default team. And then I'm also going to go down to default team. And I want to make sure, yeah, this is checked. So what this does normally is when you change the account owner, your default team will come over with you if you have this checkbox checked. And so in our scenario, we don't want the default team members to be coming over because the business, again, is going through some different changes. And right now they want basically a completely manual process of adding people to the team members. So they don't want any automation around that right now because we're still ironing out how the account team members are going to be managed. So what the code needs to do is when Salesforce wants to bring over these default account team members, so for example, in this case, Greg onto Tom's account team, Greg shouldn't come on to the account team. And if he does come onto the account team, the code should delete him off the account team again. Because unless you're the owner of the account, or unless you've been manually added after the account ownership has changed, it shouldn't automatically be doing any magic whatsoever. So what I'll do is I saved that preference. So in a normal org without the code, anytime we change an account to Tom, Greg is added to the account team. So I'm going to switch back to Lightning because I just prefer the look and feel. And what we'll do is go to an account and we'll change the owner to Tom now that we've set up his default account team. So I'm going to go to, man, another big account for me. I can't believe I'm giving all these accounts over to Tom. Go to Tom. And again, one more time, in a normal account, Greg would stay on the team because he's part of Tom's default account team. But in our org, he should fall off. And he did. So that code meets the scenarios, and we're able to manage the account team pretty easily. That all of that was done just with a process builder and less than 20 lines of code. So the beauty of Process Builder again is, let's say tomorrow we want to make a change and we no longer need our code because we're perfectly happy with the way that default account teams work. I can go back into my Process Builder. And I'll go to deactivate it. And just like that, I've deactivated that functionality. So what will happen now is I can go to my accounts. I'll go to one that I still own. And Greg and Tom are on this, and I'm also on this. What I can do is change the owner to Tom. And I'm still here. So that's what the code did. The code would knock me off. It would knock Greg off, and it would just be Tom that would be kept. But see, we turned off the code and all is right with the world. Let's say that this is desired behavior in the future state of our universal containers organization. It still exists. So the old team members are still part of the team, and we would need to go back in and update those again, either manually or through some other process, if that was the case. So yeah, so that was just a demo of some of the high-level options that Invokable Methods gives you, specifically around account team. But I'd love to just walk back to the resources because there's some really, really great blog posts if you want to learn more about what you can use these for. So you should be seeing my my PowerPoint again. Just going to confirm.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. So yeah, so the first place to get your feet wet is really to read the developer guide on invocable methods because it'll give you a little bit more around kind of the limitations of invocable methods and the nuances. Like I said, single parameter, using inner methods. The second thing is Automation Champion has a great blog post on deleting irrelevant quotes. So if you wanted to look at that one, it's another great use case for this, and it's a little bit more straightforward. But it's a really great blog post, and they do walk you through step by step how to set it up, kind of like what we did today. Bob Buzzard, another great blog post on deleting tasks. So in that, there's like a validation task that you go and delete using invocable methods, which is also a really great blog post. There's a Stack Exchange question that I found to be really helpful on working around the parameters issues with invocable methods. I don't want to say issues, but the parameters nuances with invocable methods that steps you through, what some of your options are and how to structure your code. And then finally, there's a really great article on invocable variables, which is one of the options that is talked about in the Stack Exchange, because invocable variables are their own thing. And you probably need to read the help menu or a help guide on that as well to fully understand how to use them and when they're appropriate. But that said, that's it. We're 30 minutes in and we're done.
All right, we have a couple of questions. So Mark wants to see your test class.
I admire you for calling me out on not having coverage. Like, I didn't write one for this. But the beauty of an invocable is I only have to write a test class for my invocable method, right? I don't have to write one for the trigger or trigger handler or any changes that I might have made to those. It's just my method that I have to cover. So, yeah.
All right. Maha says, initially Shannon mentioned that it is best practice to use separate process builder for insert and update. But in the process builder, we don't have the option for only for update. Can you please explain how we could achieve this only for update?
Yeah, so on this one, so really it's more about like process debugging than it is about getting your methods not to fire. So specifically around record creates, there are usually a lot more invocable methods that I've used in the past for only specifically for things that are being created for the first time net new. Um, and it's more about separating out the updates, or not the updates, the creates than it is about the updates. Just because if there are certain things that you can only do on a create element, it's really good to separate it out just for like debugging purposes around the creates. So it's something that like I can send some help articles on that, but it's more about the create than it is about the update. For for code, you can actually specify like when it's going to fire, and in your method itself, if you didn't want it to fire on creates, you could exclude it in your method. With the process builder, you saw the option here is really when a record is created or edited. So you're a little bit limited on the other declarative elements that you're going to be taking work or work items for. So like this one, it's going to happen every time a record is created or edited. But in the code itself, you can exclude things. So it's more about the create element on the declarative. And if you want to exclude things on your edit, you would do that in the code. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. All right. If folks have additional questions, go type them in now, or if you have a general process automation question, you can ask that as well. Quick question for you, Shannon. When you went to add an Apex to Process Builder, does it only pull certain Apex classes, or?
100%. I wish I would have covered that. But yeah, that's the whole purpose of today's conversation. The invocable method, that little at mention in the class, that's what shows up in your process builder. So anything where you have an invocable method, you're going to be able to pull those into process builder, but you're limited to what you've allowed to be invoked.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just going to give folks a few more minutes to see if anybody has any burning questions for Shannon. Someone said, great presentation, no burning questions. That's from Dominique.
Cool. I mean, we could do a bulk demo too, because I do have my workbook if you want to see that it works in bulk as well. But it's another feature of this is since Process Builder is bulkified, so long as your method isn't crazy, it's bulkified as well. So you don't have to worry about, hitting an issue with your SOCL queries or whatever. It does appreciate that this is a bulkified tool and that so long as your code is bulkified, you're good.
All right, no one else has any questions out there? Come on. Fairly quiet crowd this time. Now, Shannon, how did you get involved in like the developer side of things?
So that's interesting. Yeah, I have this thing where I was talking about it earlier today, actually. I feel like you can always be better at something. And for me, when I was an admin, I always wanted to be better about reading code. And then reading code quickly became I want to be better at writing code. And then writing code became I want to be better at reviewing code. So I feel like that's just part of who I am. But the good thing about the community is if you have a desire to learn about code, or you have a desire to become a developer, or to become, an admin, or, just to become anything, the community is such a supportive place that you can find people people that can mentor you, that are not only willing to mentor you, but want to mentor other people and bring them into this space and help people grow. And so, yeah, I leveraged my network, and leveraged the community, and came to the events and stuff, and went to a few developer meetups, and yeah, and just I continue to learn. The other thing is our help documentation is so amazing. So I'm a consultant, and I work on Salesforce primarily, but there's always that ask to go learn another tool or to go learn another system, or hey, we're thinking about implementing this. Can you take a look at the notes? And then I don't know, I feel like I really appreciate Salesforce because the help documentation is so amazing in comparison to some of its competitors, that it's so easy to pick something up. The help documentation is like one element or one aspect to learning, but then the other piece is Trailhead is pretty sweet now. I love like if I'm not clear on something in developer documentation, I can go out to Trailhead and there's likely a path for me to go and try it. So that's just another place where you can go and learn. And yeah, it's been, I don't know, it's pretty cool because I like being in this space for the last like 5 years. You get to see Salesforce kind of continually improve itself, and the help documentation and the learnings that are available for free, I think is only like improved over time too. So yeah.
Mhm. Great, we do have questions now. Yay, all right. Mark asks, does Shannon have a favorite Taylor Swift song?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think I have a favorite album. 1989 was my no Red. No, I don't even have a favorite album. Um, so yeah.
Steve wants to know whether you've actually met Taylor Swift.
No, but I was really close to her at her Santa Clara concert. We had pit access, and she was like 10 feet away from us, and it was amazing. And I was like, this is really, I don't know. I was like, yes, it was amazing. Yeah, sorry.
Becca says, no question, just wanted to say thanks. I'm not a developer, and a lot of this is over my head for the time being, but I'm throwing myself into this so it starts sinking in. Next question, not sure if it's in scope for today, but could a web service be invoked through something like this? We have some callouts to external systems, wondering if this could be done through process builder conditions instead of a button click.
Yeah, so I'll have to connect offline about that one. So I've used it for outbound messaging using SOAP, but yeah, I think if I have a little bit more details, who was that asked that one?
Dominic?
Dominic. Yeah. I guess my question would be to Dominic. Let's stay in touch. I'm Shannon at salesforcefinesse.com. And yeah, if you want to email me or comment on my blog, I think that would be a good blog post.
Okay. All right, we'll give another minute or so for any other questions. Taylor Swift at Dreamfest this year? I don't know. I did attend your Dreamforce session, and I thought it was great in giving folks, beginners, admins on how to learn Apex. So I think it's recorded, right, Shannon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I can find the link too and send it to you. But yeah.
Okay. All right, I am not seeing anything else come in. So, so thank you for this presentation. Hope you had a great time. I learned a lot from your presentation, learning how to call invocable methods, and I hope others learned as well. And we would love to have you back some other time.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.